Hello, everyone. My name is Sean Bland, and I've been doing Behind the Shield in Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. And I have a special treat this evening. Um, I have been able to get my good friend, Raybo is what we call him, but I'll let him introduce himself a little bit later. And something that is a rare treat. Going into Father's Day, I wanted to have an interview that will probably be timeless. If you're in Omega, this will be a great interview. But even if you're not in Omega, this is a special situation because what we have is Brother John Love, who is the son of one of our beloved founders, Brother Bishop Edgar Amos Love in that situation. And while we're talking, we might as well bring him on in. Hello, my good brothers. How are y'all today?
Oh,
Doing
Sean, how you
fine on
doing?
this end.
Let me start at the top of the screen. Brad Borges, did I say that right?
That's close enough. You can call me anything. We're good.
Yeah, I didn't even know how to spell or put your name out there originally because I've never known who you were. To me, from the time that I met you to up until now, it was Raybo. So why don't you give your name and some information about you and your tag, and then we'll move to the guest of honor.
Brothers, my name is Raymond Bourgeois, Spring 77 New Phi. I'm presently serving as the International Membership Chairman. It is my pleasure and honor this evening to do just a chat behind the shield. Sean has been so gracious to work with us, and I have a friend of mine that is really, really close to, someone that I had the pleasure and the privilege of bringing into the fold, Brother John Love. With that being said, Brother Love, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is John Love, 4 Summer 12, Pi Omega, Grand 17. Glad to have been a part of this organization for sure. Uh, if it hadn't been for a very good friend of mine and my father, Dr. McKinney, it probably would not have taken place. So therefore, I feel really honored and privileged just to be a part of Omega Sci-Fi Incorporated.
Now,
Excellent.
for those individuals that don't know specifically who you are, what is your tie to the fraternity, Brother Love?
My father was one of the founders of the fraternity back in 1911 at Howard University, and without him, I wouldn't be me, as they say.
So Father's Day is a little different with you being in the fraternity, I'm sure, in that situation, because you have so much history with one of our founders in that situation. But now, because of your relationship with Brother Raybo, I can't just say his last name. It's just a wonderful decision. So we're gonna say Brother Raybo. Brother Raybo, why don't you walk us down some paths, and I'm gonna just sit here as every other brother is gonna do is just sit here and listen to these wonderful stories.
Thank you, Sean. Brother Love, it's amazing that you're speaking of George McKenna. I knew him very, very well. A truly special brother. We could do a history on him in him just taking Nixon out of the White House. That was his job.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of brothers don't know that story. But Brother Love, I've known you, and I have to laugh when I talk to you. If you remember during your initiation, we were riding the bus to the headquarters, and I was asking you questions, and you kept telling me about you growing up. And I remember turning to you and saying, Brother Love, you all right with me, but I really want to hear about your daddy. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
And I mean, the stories we've heard are just unbelievable. So we're going to pick a few of them if you'll explain for us. One of the things to start off with, I know that you had the opportunity to meet the other founders.
Yes.
Can you tell us how was that in your household growing up?
Well, in turn, really what it was during my father's traveling. Now, of course, brother Just I was never able to meet him personally because I was, about 4 or 5 years old when he had passed away. Now, when it comes to Brother Coleman, uh, I had met him when my father had taken me to Howard University one day. I was a very young man at that time. And he took me to Howard University. I guess he had some conversations that he wanted to deal with him, being that we had just got into the District of Columbia at the time. And I was able to meet him at that time at the university. He was in his office. And when it comes to Brother Coleman, uh, he and my father were very, very close that I was aware of. And the reason I say that is because when my father was in New York, he was with the Board of Missions with the Methodist Church at that particular time. And we would travel to DC to see family, but we would always stop in Philadelphia where he and Brother Cooper got together. And, well, I'll put it this way, that they had conversations, whatever. And and it was strictly, the brother thing. But that's how I actually met them, through my father as I was on his coattail. Yeah. And if I had to say any more about them so far as that is concerned, like I said, Brother Coleman, Brother Cooper and my father, there were plenty times when we were traveling there, we would always stop there and they would be together. And I could say one little story about Brother Cooper. I used to talk to him in reference to me dealing with playing pool. And he told me, he said, "Oh, you like to play pool, huh?" He said, "Well, I want you to take you upstairs and show you something." So when we got up there, he had a special room. And when we walked in there, it was a pool table sitting in that room. It was considered a pool room. And he said, "Well, what kind of game you want to play?" I said, "Well, I just play regular pool." He said, "Okay, well," he racked them up. And in the process of racking them up, he said, "Well, why don't you just break them down?" So I got up there and I broke them down, and I missed my first shot. After that, he cleared the table. So in the process, I was talking to him. I said, "Well, my gosh," I said, "you really know how to play?" He said, "Yeah." He said, I had to learn how to play. I said, "Well, why is that?" He said, "I had to learn to get my books so I could go through school."
Wow.
Great story. Great story. Great
But
story.
when it comes to my father, when I was young, I met these founders, and to them, to me, it was like I wasn't aware of what the fraternity was basically all about when I was young. I knew that my father did a lot of traveling, and I just assumed it had a lot to do with the church. But as I got older, and we ended up in Baltimore when I was about 15 or 16 years of age, I started to realize that he had a lot on his plate at the time. And I found out that I started trying to understand exactly what was going on. And I found out that not only was he the bishop of the Baltimore area, which consisted of parts of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and DC. And then when I started to understand that he was also dealing with the Omegas, and he was also dealing with the Masons, and he was dealing with the group called the Boule, which is another organization. And then the thing that really got me was one day when he came home, he told me, he said, "Son, you're going to have to wear a suit this evening because we're going to have guests." And so I was asking him, "Well, do I really have to wear a tie, Dad?" He said, "Yes, it's a necessary thing." So, of course, I was never the one that liked ties anyway, but I didn't have a choice. And what we did, we had the governor at that time and his wife and daughter for dinner. That really frightened me, knowing that he was dealing with that. And then I found out that my father was actually, when we first came to Baltimore in '54, he had established himself with Maryland government so that he could start working on race relationships so far as Maryland was concerned.
Awesome.
And that really got me involved in what he was, as to what he was all about, which scared me half to death because I was afraid to do anything wrong for fear that I was going to embarrass him because of what his status was. And
Well, I got a question for you.
yeah,
Did he ever talk openly about some of the things that he was considering with not just Omega, but some of the other organs? Because sometimes as a child, your parent kind of tells you about a little of what they're thinking. They don't get into secrets or anything of that nature, but they kind of tell you some of the values that they picked up and just kind of guide you along. Did he ever give you any insight as to what was going through his head? With, I mean, apparently he was in everything. So go
I'll put
ahead.
it this I'll put it this way, if you don't mind me saying.
No, go
Most
ahead.
of my relationship so far is what we used to sit down and discuss was when he was in the First World War.
Really?
That
Oh,
was my interest in him at the time, because I had seen pictures of him in uniform, and he explained to me that that he had gone to get his when he was in the service, that he was originally a machine gunner, and he was trying to get his cross at the time, and they had sent him to I can't remember where they went now that I think about it, but where he went with a lot of other soldiers to get their ranks as captain, major, and things of that nature. And then the other things that he was telling me about was when he was over there during the war. A lot of people weren't aware of the fact that black troops fought under the French flag during the First World War. And how that came about was that after they had sent all the white soldiers over to France and in all the other countries, and they were fighting, and the French kept asking for additional men, and they were telling me and say, "Well, we really don't have any more men to give you." And they kept asking, and then finally they said, "Well, we got some black soldiers over here if you want them." He said, "Because we can give you those." And so they said, "Yeah, we'll take them." Well, they ended up over there, and they had to leave their weapons here, and when they got over there, they had to change their uniforms into French uniforms and use French weapons. And he was speaking to me in reference to that, and how he, at that particular time was when he had gotten his cross, and he was able to, a lot of the German soldiers that they ran across were begging him to pray for them And then, of course, where he stayed, there were 3 other officers along with him at this French lady's villa. And it was one thing that really got to me. After my father had gone through all the schooling that he had gone through, and all the things that he had to deal with, and he told me this, and it really choked me up. And that was, he said, son, when I was in France, I really started to feel like a man. And that choked me up.
Wow. Wow.
And that's to show you what they had to go through.
Yes. Yes.
Which was quite different than what we have to contend with today, because I consider this mild compared to what they've had to deal with in order to get where they got.
Most definitely. Most definitely, Brother Love.
I hate to jump in, Rainbow, but
go ahead on.
This is one of the moments where things just keep popping into your head. You said something that was real interesting, and I know that we call them the 3 Musketeers travel a lot. You kind of verified that they traveled a lot.
Yes.
I didn't realize that you went on some of these trips, and I wanted to kind of hone in for just a second, because this is a kind of important factor for anybody that's kind of listening as a child, or even as my age or a little younger. How difficult was it to travel as a Black man across the country like he did during those particular times?
I'll put it this way. I'm sure you've heard of the Green Book.
Yes.
Well, that should answer your question. But I can tell you this, that I was able to get my license early with my father, thank goodness. Of course, young kids, they're excited about doing that. And the reason for that was we were going to, after I got out of school, we were going to travel to California by a car. And it was my father, my mother, and a gentleman, which I can't relate to remember who he was, and his wife. His wife and him, both of them drove, and my father drove, but my mother didn't, so he needed an extra driver. And, well, to make a long story short, I got the license and everything, and on our way across, we stopped where his brother in Kansas City. That was our first stop, and we had made a stop. From there, we had gone. It was some hotel. I think it was a Black hotel that we really stayed at in some small town. And then after that, I think we had gone through the desert to get to Montana, where the what's that park we went to? Yellowstone Park.
Yellowstone.
And we were able to find a place to stay there. We stayed there for a period of time. And see, I'm talking about myself now.
That's okay, Brother Love. That's okay. I'm gonna bring you back. Go on, finish your thought though.
But I think the thing that really fascinated me more than anything else, when we left Yellowstone Park, the road looked like it went downhill. And when you looked at that road, I bet you I could see 5 miles ahead of me.
Yeah.
It was running downhill, and you could just see it from that point before we even got to the mountains.
Wow.
And that fascinated me more than anything else. And then we ended up in San Francisco, where one of the ministers, we stayed at his house. And then we traveled the coast and went down California. to Los Angeles, where we stayed at another minister's house, and so forth and so on. And I had the experience when we left there, when we got to Las Vegas, because we stayed at the Black Hotel there.
Oh, okay.
And that was when I learned never expect to win when you gamble. Said I saw those one-armed bandits over there, and I went to my father and I asked him. I said, Dad, I said, give me some change. I said, I want to play the. He looked at me, and he said, Son, you sure you want to do this? I said, Yeah. He said, well, I'll give you 4 quarters, and I'll let you go with that. I said, okay. Now I thought I was going to make my $1 million right there. I think when I got down there, I think those 4 quarters went in less than 3 minutes. And I ran back up in the room and I asked Dad for some more change. He said, Son, you already shot your shot right there.
Brother Love.
And
Brother Love.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Let's talk about your relationship with your father playing horseshoes.
Yeah.
Horseshoes and badminton.
Yeah, well, I can tell you about that. When my father had, I'll put it this way, 11 months out of the year, the man was busy. He had 1 month that his attention was on me and my mother. And the only time now, while we were during that time of the month, he might have some people coming over, for social, occasions. And my father and I always used to play badminton together. Well, being a young man, I figured, as we started continually playing, I started beating him on that. So he said, well, son, let's go over to the horse pit. We'll try that horseshoe pit. Well, that was a bad mistake there because I got whipped so bad, I wanted to go back on the badminton court. I'll put it this way. If he didn't do a leaner, he rang. He all he did was ring.
Wow. It's amazing. I've heard you tell the story that he was busy X number of months, but as a father, he sat down and set a time aside for you and your mother.
Oh yeah.
And doing this Father's Day weekend, and along with the atmosphere of the brotherhood, the fatherhood initiative that's been established, I think the younger brothers can read right into that our founders were dedicated to their family and taking care of their family. So we're right in line in doing those things that we do with our families, taking care of our kids. As they say, anybody can be a father, but it takes a special man to be a daddy.
Yeah. Well,
so that's...
I can explain this to you now. Now, I know that these men, were dedicated men. And, there were times, even when he was home and he would go to the office during the summertime, if he went to the office to take care of business, is one thing that I could always remember this one. He asked me one day, he said, son, you want to go to the office with me, man? And I said, yeah, I want to go with you. So when we got there, he introduced me to his secretary, and he had another lady there as a secretary also. And when I got there, he told me, he said, oh, by the way, I said, I got some papers here on my desk. I want you to file these papers for me.
He got some free work.
Hey, that's what he was doing. He was putting me to work.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say hazing, brother.
None of our children have ever had to experience that situation.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
It's amazing. It's
I'll put it
amazing
this
that
way.
relationship.
I'll put it this way. When you think of Father's Day, I've been. It's one thing that I do know. When I was growing up, my kids meant a lot to me, and I made sure that I tried to keep them as narrow, straight as possible, and keep them busy when I was able to do it. And they turned out to be very good children, and that to me made me think. Uh, I think I had that mindset when it came to my father, that I was more proud of him doing what he was doing than necessarily being with me. But I always enjoyed the times when he would say, I want to be with you. Like we'd play checkers together when he was home in the evenings, like after dinner. He would find time to relate to me, you know? And like I said, he was busy most of the time, but when he did have that time, he tried to relate to me and, of course, my wife, his wife. But he always used to tell, I was under the impression, one of the brothers that used to take him to the meetings. I'll never forget this. He was telling me, he said, your father was talking to me one day and he was saying, he really felt bad because he really couldn't spend as much more time as he could with you. And I told him, I said, well, look, I realized how important he was out there. And I didn't feel any shame for it. If anything, that's why I didn't try to get myself in any trouble, because I didn't want to embarrass him or make him look bad. To me, that was more important than anything else.
Awesome. Brother Love, that's a special message right there. Very special. I would like the brotherhood to know also that you're not in Baltimore right now. You're down in Florida with your daughter spending some time.
Yes,
Uh,
indeed. Yes,
I want
indeed.
the brothers to also know that you just recently lost your wife, your number one, your ace. And I had an opportunity to meet her, and I know how close you guys were. I wish you the best. And I've called me and you talk and look like every week, or we text for sure. And I just want you to stay upbeat. Know that the brothers love you. I still have not received my commission on pictures that you take with the brotherhood, though. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
That is pretty funny. Brother Love, you got to understand, for somebody who didn't have the pleasure of meeting any of the founders and things of that nature, my mind, and then to speak to you at this point in time, what would be one of the things that you would try, that you took away from your father's teachings, that kind of motivated you to be kind of who you are today? Because I've talked to you and I've enjoyed conversation. We've laughed and kind of played with each other during the time that we were getting started. And I don't think people, this is why I like Behind the Shield, because I don't think people understand the humanity that the brothers have outside of the great things that they do. But you had an opportunity to, like you said, deal with somebody who was busy and they happened to be your father. What are
Yes.
some of the things that you took away from that growing up and experience as a child who looked up to their father like you did?
I'll put it this way: the thing, I kind of look at it as like young men that would look up to their fathers when they're doing something constructive, and to me, it's that's what meant more to me than anything else. When it came to my father, I was actually very proud of what he was doing, and those type of things, kind of made me feel that what he was capable of doing, can I do as good as he did? Which I sometimes I feel like I'm slacking, but I keep going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to keep going.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, obligation to family as well as to your duties as a person. And we owe this to ourselves anyway.
Yes. That's a great message, Brother Love. One of the things that we want to remember at Founders Day is that your dad, our founder and founders, set the tone. That whole idea of mentoring, taking care of family. I've always taught individuals that come in, it's God first, self, family, and then fraternity and others. And when you keep those things in place, I just think it works out for the best. Listening to you, I understand clearly why the founders put in Christian manhood.
Yeah.
They were Christians, Christian manhood. And that's so important that we know and understand that.
Well, I can tell you this. God is my strength.
Amen.
Amen.
God is my strength.
Amen.
You figure we have to tolerate a lot even now. So therefore, I have to have my strength with me. And when I say that, I would hold him in the greatest, highest terms, because without him, I wouldn't be able to make it.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
changing just for a moment to a fun subject. So you said that you were a little apprehensive about when the governor came, right? That's that's a
Yeah.
high profile individual, right? All right.
Yeah, I
Who
was
were
trying to
one
figure out why these white people were coming in my house.
So you got an opportunity to probably meet a lot of fairly important people or stars or folks like that.
Yeah.
Who would be one of the top 2 or 3 that you were sitting there going, this man is in my house? Or I got to meet this person.
Well, I'll put it like this. I'm going to tell you the people that I met basically when I was in New York. Jackie Robinson, Campanella.
I'm done. I can go now.
Campanella, let me see. Fats Waller. Oh my gosh. Oh geez, I can't think of the man's name. And he was up the street and 2 blocks down. There was a big joke about him when he would go out with his band. And when he came back, he always brought a Cadillac home so he could get back in the house. That was the big joke about him. But oh my gosh,
That wasn't Callaway, was it?
No, it wasn't Cab Calloway. It was Count Basie.
Count Basie. Oh
Yeah,
man.
he lived about 3 blocks from me.
Wow.
I mean, I got one for you, because I used to beg my father sometimes, saying, "Hey, Dad, I don't want to really go to church today. Can I stay home? Can I stay home?" He'd look at me and he said, "Yeah, go ahead." Well, as soon as they left, I'd run out the house, go down the street, go through the park, and stand in front of the candy store right next to the A&P. And I was waiting for Campanella to come in with his big pink Cadillac, and he'd give me $1, and I'd run in and get his newspaper, bring it out, and he'd say, "Keep the change, son." I say, "Thank you."
Wow.
And I'd go back
Wow.
in and get me a bag of candy.
Wow.
Wow.
Now that's an amazing story.
Wow. Okay.
Oh,
Well, is there
I don't know how to top
is there something that you want to impress on the public about you and your father's relationship that you think is something that people need to hold on to for their own life?
Yeah.
Well, I'll put it this way. It's always understood, we play around a lot, but when it comes to business, you have to be serious. And when kids are looking at you and you're dealing with something in a serious manner, they should have a sense to understand that you are not playing around, you're doing something important. That should give them some kind of insight as to what you're all about. I kind of feel that way because this is basically how it worked with me, knowing what my father was all about. Like I said, I didn't want to do, I'm not saying I didn't get myself in a little hot water here and there, but I'm just saying serious stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you were a kid. That's right.
Well, see, it's a big joke. When we first moved here, my father had to get rid of the house that he had in New York and get the house down here. And all this was done before, after school got started. So when I came down to Baltimore, I stayed with one of my aunts and went to school from there. So of course, when I had to do that, I'd hang on the corner with the guys, just to be, shooting the jive, as the guys would say. And it was funny because when some of the guys would get to talking about, hey man, let's do this. I said, oh yeah, that reminds me. My aunt told me she wanted me to do this, and that was kind of my way out. And it got to the point where every time they would get up here and say, "Oh man, don't worry about Love. He ain't gonna do nothing, man."
Yeah.
I was a happy camper.
That's pretty funny.
Brother Love, that sounds familiar. I used to tell my daughters, anytime somebody wants you to do something stupid, tell them you got a crazy mama.
There you go.
Yeah. Raybo, did you have any final questions, or did you
No,
want to take them down the path?
I'm just full of love right now, Brother Love.
Anything that you wanted to finish off and say, Brother Love, because this is really about. I do have one request before I turn it over to you to say those last words for our audience. If you don't mind, I would like for you to kind of give us from your father's level as far as your family members there, and your current level where your family members, his wife, any brothers, stuff like that. And then I'd like to know about you and your wife. Say their names so that we can hold that for historical fact.
Yeah, we need that fist. Yeah.
Okay. My wife's name was Blanche Hines Love.
All right.
And she was a North Carolina girl, and I can tell you a story about that one because when I met her in D.C.
Now we need the clean version now.
All right, brother, I got you. And she was having problems with this other gentleman, and so she said, "Well, I was working 2 jobs at the time, so I was as busy as I could be, so I could only be around him but so often." So she said, "Well, I'm gonna go back down to North Carolina, so I got to get rid of this guy." I said, "Well, you're only going to be down there 6 months." She said, "Yeah, okay, if that's what you say." And so after 6 months, I ended up back in Baltimore because I was in D.C. at that time. And so when I got back to Baltimore, I started courting her from that point on, back and forth between there and North Carolina. And one day I called her and I said, "Well, it's time for you to come to Baltimore." I said, "Because this running around is not helping." She said, "Well, if I can't get a job," she said, "I'm not coming up there." I said, "Well, that's fine." I said, "I'm going to get a job for you." So I just happened at that time, I knew the superintendent of the Baltimore County school system. And I spoke to him, and that's how I got a job for her in Baltimore to get her home. And I'll put it this way, the relationship that we had, we ended up, nobody was perfect. Everybody looked after each other, and we took care of the house the best way we could with the kids. And we made sure that any problems that came up, we would work it out. And that's another thing about my father, getting back to him. When sometimes when I would end up doing something a little goofy, he'd always ask me, he said, "Boy, why did you do that? Do you understand what you did?" And I'd look at him like, "Hey, Dad, I apologize." I said, I would just melt right at that point because it was just like I felt like I'd put a knife in his heart, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because when you're a man that's doing a good thing, if children cannot understand what that's all about, especially if you could just even take them with you or have them at times doing things that are constructive, even if you have to say, find a way to get them to play basketball at a school game, or why don't you join the basketball team, or join the, things that are constructive, things to keep them from looking at the street. Those are the kind of things that you attempt to do in order to keep them constructive. I don't care even if they had or anything in sports or curricula in any sense of the word that you could sit down and say, well, what are you interested in? What do you think you want to do? Why don't you take something that would give you something in that area? There's a lot of things in high school that you could do that could put you in that area, so that by the time you decide to get to college, then maybe you might be able to work it a little better.
Good job.
All
What
right.
about your?
Go ahead, Raymond.
Yeah. Your dad's your mom's name. Can you give us her full name?
Yes, my mother's name was Virginia Ross Love. That was my mother. Now I'm gonna tell you, my relationship between me and my wife, we understood that we leaned on each other. It was a situation where I wasn't good at, she was good at, she would work with me. If something she wasn't good at, I was good at, I would work it with her. We tried to be each other's strength. And that
Amen.
relationship just made that bond just even tighter. And the other thing is, if oh, all of a sudden it just happened to leave me.
It's
Lord
okay.
knows.
That's okay.
Yeah, because she and I were so close.
Yeah.
It just meant it just it's hard for me to explain it.
Well, it sounds like you guys were friends.
Oh
That
yeah,
was first. Yeah, and that's so important in this day and age we live in.
friends,
Well,
lovers, whatever you want to call it. Like I said, we were each other's tower.
yeah. Brother Love, this has truly been an exciting experience. Uh, I know this is just the beginning for Sean and I. We have some more brothers that we're looking forward on interviewing, but you have really set the tone very, very high for whoever follows after you. And
And you
on behalf of myself and Sean, we want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. God bless you, and
This
happy
did not
Father's Day.
disappoint at all. You have lived up to what I expected it to be, just sitting here soaking up the knowledge. And I appreciate
Yes,
it, Brother Love.
thank
Well,
you.
I'll put it this way, gentlemen. I'm going to say, may you have a beautiful, blessed evening, and may the Lord bless you real good.
Thank
Amen.
you, sir. And for our guests, we appreciate you being with us this afternoon. Um, as you can see, this was one of those opportunities where we get to hear from the son of a founder. And as you can see, there's more to Omega Psi Phi than what people see with just the brothers. As he said, they were family. His father was busy, but he took time to be a
Yes,
part of his life, knowing that he was a part of so many different organizations and was trying to make the world a little bit better for his son and others around him. So I think that from a Father's Day situation, this personifies what Omega it tries to put out, and also just a good father and a good and he became and Brother Love became a good father as he's in the house of his child right now having this conversation with him. So for all of the individuals that tuned in, we appreciate you, and we will continue to put these out and to give stories behind the shield of Omega Psi Phi. Thank you.
Thank you, brothers.